This is the Realty Classroom Podcast, episode number 165. Systematizing is easy. Are you a real estate agent with an entrepreneurial spirit who wants to turn your job into a business without sacrificing your lifestyle, but you just can't seem to find the right plan or any plan to help you get there? Well, then, hey, you are definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Realty Classroom and the host of this podcast. And to help you take immediate action to get started in the right direction, I've created a free strategic plan for you that's waiting at freeagentgift.com. Boy, I tell you, I just got off the phone with somebody today that I was hiring for the brokerage, and the first thing they asked for was a plan. I'm going to give you one for free if you'll only take advantage of it. freeagentgift.com. All right, in this episode, I want to talk about systematizing is easy. And when I was reviewing a lot of what I've talked about on the podcast over the last several months, and perhaps from the beginning, the word system comes up all the time. And I can't get away from it because I would be doing you, the listener, an injustice. It is so critical to understand that the best businesses obsess over creating systems for literally everything. You see, when you're really beginning this, before I get into the podcast bullet points here, I want to talk about this. You're already doing things systematically. That's the way we survive. If you think about the way that you go through your life in each day, you're following some system. And as you get in a rhythm, it tends to repeat itself. Well, that's systematic. The only thing is you haven't documented it, right? You haven't written it down. So you presume it's not organized, but it is. Otherwise, you wouldn't be surviving. All right. So the first bullet point here about systematizing is easy is the way you see yourself is the start. That's the most important thing. When you're trying to become systematic in business, if you keep seeing yourself a certain way, the brain is protecting that vision that you're creating for yourself. So yesterday in our mastermind, one of the folks that I've known forever, it was interesting. She said, I can't see that. She's very visual, and it was great for her to say that. I can't see that. So, again, we're close, so I can talk a little bit more snarky and a little bit more cutting edge with her. And I said, what do you mean you can't see it? Because what I was talking to was this paradigm that was coming out of her mouth. It's not her. It's a paradigm. It's an interference. That's what it is. It's the resistance, right? There's a great book that The War of Art. I think that's the name of it. Really good book. And they talk about this personification of the resistance. The resistance crops itself up. I can see it in my kids. I can see it in my clients, and I can see it in myself. So up pops the resistance all the time. And it collides in, just especially when you're trying to grow into something bigger or learn something. It fills you up, and you say things like, I can't see that. Or that's not me. Or I'm not ready for that. All those things explode, right? Explode into your brain. And so then you begin to see not just that thing that way, but you see yourself that way. And what I did differently, if this helps you, back about 10 years ago, after having learned this from my original mentor, and I needed to disconnect from that whole situation to almost start fresh and go back to the fundamentals of the way Michael Gerber talks about any entrepreneur. And that was to see myself as a balance between being entrepreneurial, which I always was. I mean, I'm unemployable, which is sort of aggravating because I had a pretty good business career going when all of a sudden this cropped up and the entrepreneur in me just said, you're unemployable. You need to go do something creative. And so you know sometimes whether you're an entrepreneur or not. And all of you in real estate need to have some entrepreneurial bone in your body because you're an independent contractor. So by definition, you're pretty entrepreneurial when you do that because nobody's coming for you. That's the premise of an entrepreneur. Nobody's coming for you. It's on you. So that's alive and well. And then if I skip a layer and I go down to the technical work, meaning the sales work. So if you know nobody's coming for you, a lot of you can wake up every day and sell something to make a living and make it happen. But what you don't see is the persona in the middle, the manager, right? The manager is the person who has to exist. And most of us have that in a very nascent way. I mean, there's some fabulous management brains. I mean, there are young students that go to fabulous schools, MIT and other schools, and one of the schools my son's looking at. And I just think of Yale Management, right? Their business school, just Yale Management, School of Management. And there are some people that come out of the box and they can't wait to manage things. They're organized. They like to organize. But for independent contractors who are trying to run a business like a small real estate business, that's usually not the case. So you have to learn to be that person. So how do you do that? Well, that's the second point here. You become conscious of what you do each day first. You become conscious of it. I think that's the awakening that has to happen first, is that, oh, I get what he's saying. I always wanted to run a business for myself. I hear that a lot from agents that want to join the Griffin. They say to me, look, I always wanted something for my own. And I love that, especially the women that come to me that have had children and they want this thing of their own, and they start to become conscious of that desire. But then once they start to do this, I said, look, you have to be conscious of what you do every day. This isn't like catching fireflies. One goes off and you grab it. Lead gen this, referral that. We're not catching fireflies here. What we're trying to do is be conscious of the business as a whole and then what you're doing in it. So if you're already in the business, this is definitely for you about becoming systematized. Just become more conscious of what you do. See, if the idea of managing scares you, shuts your brain down, shuts it off, there's the resistance. Be conscious of that first, but then be conscious that you're actually already managing things. It's just a little bit chaotic. I have 2 brand new clients at the Realty classroom that are top producers, and they're really good at what they do. So before I teach them all the systems that we've created, I say, let's just be conscious of what you're doing and how you're doing it. So the first several months is just that, okay, so you did that all by yourself. Why do you think you're exasperated? So you're running around, you missed a coaching call, you're doing everything by yourself at the highest level possible, right until you're about to pop. So become conscious of that. Begin to write it down, right? And that's the third point here. What do you mean write it down? Well, list each stage out, right? So the first thing that I have them do is be cathartic. Get it out of your head and onto a piece of paper. I am never far. You'll see, for all of you that are going to see the replay and video somewhere, there is a legal pad right next to me. I'm holding it up for the video viewers. And my favorite implement is the mechanical pencil, because I can erase and I can redo things and I can have this cathartic moment all the time. And it's sort of like a therapy. But when I'm very serious about systematizing what I do and how we do it, or I'm working with somebody on my team that I've already delegated the job to and we want to refine it, we list every step out the way that we do it now. And that makes us conscious of what we're doing. See, right before this, I said, be conscious of what you do. How? We'll list each step out. And then you can go back and forth. Wow, I do it that way. I don't like that. Why do I put it in? Why did I do it in that order? Why didn't I do it in this order? See what I mean? Then all of a sudden, I'm beginning to reorder that list. Brian Tracy, in his goals setting book, in a lot of Brian's books, he repeats a lot of the common themes. But one of them, he was the one that I learned this from. You take a piece of paper and you write down your goals before you go to bed. You trigger the subconscious a la psycho-cybernetics to get the resources to do it. And the next day, you don't look at that list. You flip it again. You write those goals again. Because what's happening is you're editing. You're editing. And this is how you grow time. See, a lot of people are sort of all over the place. Well, I don't have time to do that. Well, you're right. You don't have time to do it the way you're doing it because it's chaos. And even though it is subconsciously systematic, it's sort of like, let me prove the point to you, by the way. Have you ever driven, sort of spaced out and woken up safely in that, or awakened, you're still conscious, but you've awakened and say, I don't even remember the ride. Well, that's the point. Most of us are unconsciously systematic. We're unconsciously systematic. So by listing out the steps, we're becoming consciously systematic. Got it? It's very simple. And so now you have that list. And then if you were to imagine, let's go back to the start here. Imagine your business holistically. You do some things to market and let people know you're out there. You do some things to convert a lead to a prospect to a client. You do some things to babysit that person during the closing. And then hopefully you do something when they're a past client to hopefully stay in touch with them so that someday they repeat or at least they refer. It's a pretty simple business for every business, right? So now all of a sudden you have modules. You can manage the lists in that module for marketing, for conversion, for closing, for past clients. Pretty simple. What are the basic things that you already do? Clean them up, all listed out. Now you have a manual, a la manager. Just like that, right? Don't have to go to Yale Management School to learn something that simple. Not knocking Yale Management, Harvard Business School, any of those places. Fabulous distinctions and details, but come on. This is common sense. List the steps out, put them into the modules and the way the business works, put them in a 3-ring binder, and guess what? You have a system. Now, of course, over time it will grow and it will become more detailed, but at least you have one. There it is. Good for you. And the final point here is to practice sticking to your steps to avoid the random patterns, because you will have what's called a snapback effect. See, in Maxwell Maltz's book, The New Psycho-Cybernetics originally, then it became The New Psycho-Cybernetics when Dan Kennedy, who is one of my mentors, marketing mentors, he redid it, made it a little bit more accessible from a modern day perspective with just language and his own idea of things. They talk about the snapback effect. And see, we become so habitual and so systematic in the way that we behave unconsciously, that becomes comfortable. So what happens is when it becomes comfortable, we will snap back to it because that's what the animal brain wants to do. So all of a sudden you have this new rigor or this new self-discipline that you have to stick to, and you throw a tantrum. I call it the management tantrum. You'll throw a tantrum. Well, I don't want to do this exactly that way. I just want to sell something. That's the child inside of us that says, I want to be comfortable. I want my lollipop. I want my cake and I want to eat it too. I don't want to do all this work anymore. And you snap back to the random patterns. And then you wonder why when you wake up, your business isn't where it should be. And worse, down the line, I hear this all the time. Well, I thought I'd be further along in my career than this. Why? I'm not entitled to anything. I'm entitled to nothing. If you don't constantly refine your steps and your strategies as things change, whether it be technology, marketplaces, the business, whatever it might be, if you're not constantly in this game of listing out these steps and managing them, you will naturally fall behind. That's life. Businesses become extinct because they don't evolve. So why would it be any different for small business than it is for big business? You're obligated to constantly evolve and stick to these patterns. And when you stick to these patterns and steps to avoid the randomness, what happens is you're more in the game every day, and you can sense when change is about to interfere with you, knock your business around, and you evolve. And so when somebody comes and sees your business, it always looks fresh, right? Whether it be your logo evolving, your website evolving, your signs evolving, what you say to people, how you say it to them, what sort of materials you give them, all of that's evolving, right? All right, let me go back and summarize this. Systematizing, whether you realize it or not, is easy. And what I'm going to start off before the bullet points in a review, remember what I said today about unconscious systemization. You're doing that right now, and that's how you survive. You're unconsciously systematic in the way you do things, and perhaps that's what you need to realize about your business. But number one point was the way you see yourself is the start. If you don't see yourself ever as a manager, you'll struggle. You have to let that persona in here. Number two, become conscious of what you do right now, right? If you just become conscious of what you do, that's the first step to systematizing as a manager. Next, the real action step is to list out each step in those modules. Remember, marketing leads to conversion, leads to closing, leads to past client community. And lastly, 4, practice sticking to your steps to avoid random patterns. I recommend you put your steps in a book, and that when you're doing something, open it up and double check yourself. Let me summarize this way. When top producing agents first realize they're losing their lives to selling more properties, they wonder if will ever be a better way without losing their business, right? Will there be a better way, or will it just come to a harsh end? The lesson to be learned is simply starting to see yourself as a business person in whole, who needs to be organized with systems that perhaps already exist in rough draft form right now and need to be written out and followed to ensure the agent understands how time is actually leveraged. That's how you grow time, by getting organized. Before, especially for your top producers, before delegating to other people who will ultimately also help you free yourself from doing it all yourself. So remember that. List first for you, Then you can see what you can delegate and give that list to somebody else. If you just hire a person first with no list, you got a problem. Remember, you can take immediate action and get started in the right direction, or perhaps a better direction if you're struggling, with a copy of our free agent plan that's waiting for you at freeagentgift.com. Also, don't forget you can subscribe to this podcast, he said, on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We'd also love to hear from you, so please, if you see us out there somewhere, comment. I don't know what's happened to the world. Everybody's withdrawn. I'm here. If you ask me a question, you find me, I'll answer you, right? And if I don't answer you, find me on another platform where I see you. But remember this, I appreciate that you're listening, but I sign off the same way every time. Remember this, nobody's coming for you. I mean, nobody. So go get to work on your own business and a plan for that business, and we will see you in the next episode, hopefully to inspire you to do just that. Thanks again.